this week's episode of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. Grab a seat at the table as Masters rowing coaches Marlene Royal and Rebecca It's
not going live. Come on.
We are live.
No, it says go live on mine. It doesn't. Does it say?
If our audience is there, mine says.
Oh, you've got real people there. That's cool. Sorry, I thought in mine it's not saying that I'm live at all. Very curious. Not to worry. Hey, welcome everybody to Faster Masters Rowing Radio. It's Rebecca Caro and Marlene Royal. And today we are going to be talking about erg racing and to give you our top checklist that you need to prepare yourself if you're going to be doing any of the many real in-person and virtual erg races that are coming up through February and March. As ever, I'm Rebecca Caro and I'm joined by Marlene Royal.
Hello, Rebecca, and hello to our Faster Masters audience.
It's lovely to be back together again. Now, personally, I'm not one to choose erg racing unless I absolutely have to. Having said that, I did do the virtual erg league that was run out of the US for the last 2 years. So I'm clearly persuadable. But I recognize that there are quite a lot of people who are choosing to do this as a great focus for their training over the past 3 or 4 months. And of course, you know, the Crash Bees is absolutely massive, always has been. If you didn't know, it stands for the Charles River All-Star Has-Beens, which most people don't know. They just think it's a great name for a crazy erg competition. And of course, we've got the World Rowing Indoor Championships, which are in Canada this year.
Yeah, the 25th of February. And this week, by the way, is the virtual head of the Charles.
Oh, yeah.
It's right. The head of the 4702 challenge.
Exactly. Can you actually program an erg to 4702, or have they rounded it down to 4700? I'm sure they've rounded it down. I've never seen 2 as a digit.
I have no idea. I don't know. I'm going to be honest. Listeners.
Exactly. Now, let's dive straight into the core of the topic, preparation for erg racing. And here we're not talking about your training program. We are talking about the organization that sits behind everything that is going to get you to the start line. And people who are regular listeners may remember that we've done this in the past with preparation for on-water racing. And we have an answer. The answer is yes, you can. 4702. Thank you. This is great. This is why the community is here, because they know more than we do. Marlene, kick us off. What are the core things that we need to start running through? Do you have an actual checklist that you look at for? So we'll do the checklist a little later.
Yeah,
let's talk first about the prep in the weeks before your race event.
Well, I think if you're, first of all, if you're thinking about the week before your event, let's start there. You're going to be tapering a bit. So you're going to be maybe training with the same frequency, but you're going to be decreasing the amount of time that you're training, just to basically, that week before your race should be a recovery week. So I would really emphasize, get enough sleep, get rested, eat really well. Just really think about recovery and restoration, because going into your race, if you're fatigued, it's going to be really hard to perform your best. And if you're fatigued, it's really hard to push through that tough third quarter of the race, So in order for that mental toughness, you have to be focused, and that means you have to be rested. So put a really big emphasis on rest, hydration, good diet, take good care of yourself, and get yourself organized for your trip. Even if you're just driving to the other side of the town, but you also might be flying to another state or province to come and compete. So, start writing down what you need, start knowing, what you need to take with you, when we'll talk about that a little bit later. But, make sure that I think, give yourself enough time to do things. If you're feeling rushed, or you don't have enough travel time, or you're really up against the clock, that's just going to raise the stress level. So, keep the stress level down, give yourself a little extra time to rest and relax. And I think if you're, some people in the US travel to a different time zone to go to crash bees, and so if you can give yourself an extra day just to chill out and recover. I mean, I don't consider travel days rest days. Travel days can be quite stressful these days. So, if you have a travel day, and if you can afford the time to be at your race town or site a day before and just chill out and get some rest, I think that's ideal. But, think about.
I like to encourage everyone to always do your race warm up for every single workout that you can, as early as you can, even, starting off, so you get really, really familiar with it. The purpose for me of that is that it calms you down, because you're in a routine, in a ritual that you really know really well. And, a lot of us will count strokes, or you've got a minute to do this, and then you have to count a 20 to do that, or whatever it is you do in your warm up. It makes your mind really zone in on one thing. Right, I'm doing this for 1 minute, and then after that minute I'm doing the next thing. So your mind doesn't race off and do other things, and it really helps you to focus and zone in, to give yourself the right attention to your body and to your warm up. It also allows you to test whether the warm up was sufficient for the workout. And that might give you some good information and feedback about whether you need to change your warm up, so that, you really are warmed up when it comes to the race.
Yes, I think so. And I totally agree with that, because your warm up, and like you said, your routine means you don't have to think about it. You know what to do next. And it's a signal to your body, like, okay, well, we're getting ready to do something. And you go through your warm up. And a very common mistake on race day is people cut their warm up short. And I would really advise not to do that, because you're going to work this out in practice. You know what you need to be ready. You don't want the first part of your race to be your warm up. So I think making that a really, really key part of your practice is very important. And, like you said, it'll calm you down. You know what's next. And then you know exactly how long it takes you. So you know how long you need to be, when you need to get to the venue, when you need to do things, and how long you need to warm up before you're actually going to start.
Any other things you can think of, Marlene?
I think, honestly, I think just having a very simple routine for your workouts. Like, for example, you pack your bag the night before. You put out what clothes you're going to wear. You make sure you've got your water bottle goes in this pocket, your snack goes in this pocket. You have some dry clothes in case you need it. They go in your bag. I would try to do that for every single practice. Just have your bag always be the same, so that if your water bottle's not there, something's missing. And and because it's really easy on race day to be nervous and to forget something, and then you get there and you're like, oh my God, I don't have my water bottle. I can't believe this. And I also think being mindful, and rather than taking your clothes and just shoving them in your bag, I think if you take the moment to fold your jacket and fold your shirt and put it in your bag in a neat fashion, again, it just makes you pay attention to what you're doing. And that becomes very important in a race, because you can only row the stroke you're rowing. You can't row the stroke you rowed, and you can't row the next stroke. So just that, anything that kind of grounds you like that, it's very simple, but just folding your clothes, and putting them nicely in your bag activates, that mindfulness.
I like the idea of that. And I like the idea of, I always put my clothes out the night before, partly because it's really hard to get dressed in the dark. And because I have in recent weeks remembered everything for my workout. And then I've gotten into the shower, and one time I forgot my towel, and another time I forgot my work shoes. It's like, that was so much embarrassing, going around all day, wearing my flip-flops, which was hilarious.
Oh, no.
But luckily it's summertime, so kind of nobody actually probably thought it was slightly strange. So definitely packing everything the night before is really helpful. Any last bits, Marlene? Don't laugh at me.
I'm going to diverge, but can I tell you a really stupid story? One day, this is when I rowed in university, and I lived in Boston, and I lived only a couple blocks from the boathouse. And I was in my rowing clothes, and I went downstairs. I lived on the second floor, and I went downstairs to the porch in my bare feet, still in my rowing clothes, to check the mail. And when I went to check the mail, the wind slammed the door shut and nobody was home. So there I was in my rowing clothes, in my bare feet, and I had to go to work. And I worked at Tuscanini's ice cream parlor, which anyone who lives in Boston knows, it's a very, very famous ice cream parlor that used to hire only rowers, right? And I worked there right from the very beginning for many, many years. So I had to walk from my house all the way, say a kilometer to the ice, because I had to go to work. I had to walk in my bare feet in my rowing clothes all the way, go to work, get there, borrow clothes from people, sweatshirts.
You didn't have a uniform.
Shoes and something. And I had to spend all day working in somebody else's shoes with a Tuscanini's sweatshirt on, and wait till somebody came home. It could, we didn't have cell phones in those days, right? So I had to wait till somebody came home so I could get back in the house.
I regret to say that I have the exact same story, except when I was at university in my first year, the bathroom was on the ground floor and I was on the first floor, which is the second floor for Americans. And I had a latch on my bedroom, and I didn't put the catch down, the snib, properly. Went down to shower and came back, couldn't get into my room. So I had to walk in my towel across the court to the porter's lodge to ask if they had a spare key to my room. Which, given that it was the first time they'd had women in the college, they were probably like...
I know. That was just so thinking of your pre-race routine. I was just thinking of like stupid things can happen, right? And so who thinks that the door's going to slam shut when I'm checking the mail in the mailbox, right? So anyway, but having the routine, knowing where your stuff is, just have a backup plan.
Yes, exactly. Hide the key somewhere, which is another story which I'm not going to tell right now. Now, our sponsor today is the Erg webinar. So this is a pre-recorded webinar which Faster Masters did last year, just before the crash bees, with a stellar cohort of really experienced erg racers. When you buy the webinar, you can just dive straight in and start watching. It features Graham Benton, the Erg Daddy, as he calls himself, multiple British world and British record holder. It features Pat Hamner, who was a lightweight, who talks about dieting and what he did in order to prepare for his, I think, record-breaking erg. And then two sisters-in-law, Megan and Falcone, and her sister-in-law, whose name I've completely forgotten, but I'll think of in a minute. Jordan, that's right, who have come to erging through CrossFit. And they have just brilliant insights of what you can do and what you need to do. If you want to get this, go to fastermastersrowing.com/register/erg-racing, or just go to our programs page. You will see it there. Now back to the Erg Racing checklist that Marlene promised you. So this is, get your pens out, people. This is so worth having. And if you're watching this on the replay, the checklist will be in the show notes lower down. What's in it, Marlene?
Well, first of all, make sure that you have your racing suit, your racing shorts, or your racing tights. Okay, You look much better racing on the erg when you have your uniform on. Make sure you've got a warm-up jacket and pants, because you might be in a venue, it might be really hot, but it also could be cold depending on what, how big an area or what type of gymnasium or hall it might be in. Have a dry change of clothes for after your race, a towel. If you use a heart rate monitor, make sure you have your heart rate monitor. If you have your fitness watch or something like that, make sure you have that on. Your water bottle. Have food and snacks in your bag with you, because you need to make sure you stay well fueled. So depending how long you get, how early you get to the venue, you may have a couple of hours, so you may need that snack, getting closer to your race. Have your entry information. So it's important when you arrive at the venue that you have your entry confirmation, and that you find out where the registration is so that you can pick up your number. And have your hotel information so you know where to go, and how to get from your hotel to the venue, or from your house to the venue, depending on how far away it is. But once you're at the venue, a couple of things, like find out where's the information desk. How do you check your registration or get your erg assignment? They're going to tell you where the warm-up area is and where your assignment is for the actual competition. Find out right away where the restrooms are. That can be quite important when you're in a strange location. You don't want to be hunting around for bathrooms at the last minute. And, get your details. Make sure you've got your details clear, your starting time, your erg assignment, know who your referee or your coxswain is assigned to you, and, plan your time accordingly to get to the warm-up area and warm up on the machines.
So you're allowed a coach with you for every erg race, is that right?
I believe so. I mean, I think honestly, it may vary from competition to competition. You may be able to have your own coxswain or coach with you, but I believe that there are referees that are also assigned to
they are,
monitor.
They watch, yeah. There's one per erg, I believe, in most of the big competitions. Certainly the ones that are in a venue, rather obviously than the virtual ones.
Yes, and once typically once you are called to your competition erg and you sit down on the erg, you're allowed to make your foot stretcher adjustments, I think, and to adjust your drag. But after that, you're not allowed to touch the monitor. So the referee usually has to set everything that needs to be set. So once you have your personal settings, then you have to wait and just let the referee set the monitor up for the competition.
Now, a question about drag, and setting your drag factor is something that is done in order to standardize erg tests. Are you allowed to set whatever you want for a competition?
As far as I know, yes.
And what do you think is the difference between having a drag of, say, 110 versus 140 on a Concept 2? Because it's often said that 140 is the standard for heavyweight open weight men, 130 or 25 I think for open weight women, and 110 was always said to be for juniors, and like 90 for very young kids. But why?
Well, probably different drags apply to different strengths, but I think what drag factor is optimal for you depends on how you like to row. Like some people like to row a little bit lower stroke rate with a bit more power. Some people prefer a little bit more more turnover, so they're going to prefer a slightly lighter feel to the erg, because a lower drag makes it easier to pick up the flywheel and keep the flywheel spinning. The flywheel's not going to slow down as much between each stroke, so you can be a bit lighter. And I think that's something that individually, if you're racing, I think that is something that you want to experiment with. And this is why you have to, practice race pace pieces and practice, you have to try to balance what stroke rate works the best with which drag factor to give you the best score. And that, I think that is good. That it's like rigging, you know, it's going to take you a little bit of experimentation. But
Yeah.
if you wanted to be super technical, I seem to remember, and I'm just recalling this, you know, off the top of my head, but when Rob Waddell was competing at Crash Bees some years ago, they spent a fair bit of time playing around with the drag factor on the machine to get the drag factor that gave him the same time on the drive as in the boat. So that's another way to approach drag factor, which obviously, you know, you need somebody with a really good, you know, good way to time this to figure this out. But you know, as we know, you know, rigging in the boat is aimed point, you know, 0.8 seconds blades in the water drive time, and they were trying to match the drive time on the erg to match the drive time in the boat. So
that's good logic. Yeah. And I know Rob Waddell trained all the time on a row perfect, and then he switched to the concept just before the competition, and they had to make an extra long row perfect bar because the 2-meter bar was too short for his very tall frame.
But you know, yeah. So, so good comment. I know for me, if the drag is too low, I don't pick up the tension on the handle as soon. Yeah, because it can be too light, right? And you're just spinning your wheels. So again, and it depends, you know, how strong are you? What stroke rate? I mean, obviously, you're not going to row 38 strokes a minute for 2K, right? But you don't want to row 22 either, right? So, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, different strokes for different folks. And again, you know, knowing how and where to push yourself and the things that work for you are really, really important. So know thyself as an athlete is the mantra here. And going back to how we actually started this discussion, which is your warm up, every single practice, every workout, do the same warm up. Is it working? Are you warmed up enough? Did you, you know, if you're doing short pieces, maybe in this workout, did you do better on the second than the first? That's probably a sign that you weren't warmed up enough for the first one. Or if you have extreme lactic acid pain in your muscles after the first one, you feel very out of breath. Again, chances are that it means that you didn't warm up enough so that you were ready to race. And you just don't want to make a mistake that's easily rectifiable. You know, yes, there will be things that you might view as mistakes, but my counsel is just learn from them. Try and make as many of them as you can in practice so that you can learn from them and you don't make them on the race day.
Right. Remember, Mike Teddy always says, it's only a mistake if you do it twice.
There's a great mantra from a great coach. And I know he's famously a man of few words, but I'll bet he's got a few stories. Like, you never locked yourself out of your house barefoot when there was no mail in the mailbox twice, did you? And I definitely didn't lock myself out of my bedroom twice.
I know.
So this has been Faster Masters Rowing Radio. It's been lovely having you with us. Please tell your friends and leave a review if you are on iTunes.
We are part of the Rowing Chat Podcast Network. Please tell your rowing friends about the show. And if you've learned just one helpful thing from today's episode, please consider supporting the show for as little as $1 per month by visiting fastermastersrowing.com/podcast.